What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I'm your co-host, Louis Ezekiel. Joining me tonight, my pal and yours, Derrick Dodson. Derrick, how are you doing this fine Tuesday evening?
Doing quite well, thanks. Just enjoying the games of hockey and this week before fantasy playoffs.
Well, I'm glad you can. I've been very distressed watching my hapless Red Wings just get crushed with Dylan Larkin out of the lineup. That has been a nasty turn of events for them. Looking at giving up, I think, 7 goals here today. That 0G option for the Red Wings not working out so well. If this is maybe your first episode, although I doubt it is, Short Shifts is that twice weekly check-in between the ginormous Sunday shows from Keeping Karlsson, designed to keep up to date with fantasy news, takes, and analysis all through the fantasy season. And if you missed last Sunday's show, Elon joined forces with Steve Laidlaw for a simile-filled show that was really entertaining. They mentioned getting a Beanie Buddy instead of a Beanie Baby in reference to Kakinen going to New Jersey. I just thought that was entertaining because as a kid, I was a real entrepreneur. I was maybe 10 or 11, and I would call up all the Hallmark stores and find out if they had Beanie Babies in stock and go buy them up, and then I could sell them in the Saturday classifieds for free as long as I charged less than $70. So I could turn them around and sell them for, $50 sometimes. It was a real lucrative adventure for me as a young person. I think it says a lot about where I am now.
Louis, let's not have another long shift.
All right. The last thing I'll say is I'm just disappointed we didn't get to find out how Matt Dumba is like when your mom burns the turkey. But yeah, check out Sunday's show if you haven't seen it before. I'll take your advice here, Derrick. Let's jump right into the headlines. The big one here is that Jake Guentzel made his return for Carolina. Not a super exciting return, but Derrick, what do you think? Guentzel came back, played line 2 with Necas and Kuznetsov. Got power play one time, but that group looked a lot more like a power play 2. I think it might have been an artifact of the top guys having been out for a shift when that penalty occurred. But what do you think of the new Carolina lineup with the additions of Kuznetsov and now Guentzel making his return?
Yeah, I think, you've got 2 new people on that line. And even just one new player often takes a while to mesh, and I wouldn't be too concerned if you're a Guentzel manager. I think it's generally should still be a good thing, if not great. Not necessarily Sidney Crosby great, but more interesting for me was that the lines as they shook out seemed to be really great for Aho, Svechnikov, and Teravainen. That top line, not including Kuznetsov and Guentzel. I think it's good if you're a Svechnikov manager that Carolina deployment's always been a little risky. So this was an opportunity for some reason one of those guys to get demoted and find themselves on a bad second line or a third line situation. But no, they're all doing good. So I would have patience with Guentzel. I probably still wouldn't be that interested in Kuznetsov unless your format is really deep. Just good news for the other guys still in Carolina, I think.
Yeah, so we did see Kuznetsov out there with Aho, Burns, Svechnikov, and Jarvis kind of getting the power play 2 time, but that certainly looks like a power play 1 group. But we do have Guentzel coming in off of an injury. I wouldn't be surprised to see him elevated once he's got his legs under himself there in Carolina. The other big news so far this week is Thatcher Demko's injury. He's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. So it looks like Casey DeSmith is going to have an opportunity for volume. He's been decent this season, 52% quality start percentage. Played well the last 2 appearances, 10 saves in 33 minutes of relief against Winnipeg, and allowing a goal on 18 shots against Anaheim the game before. But the 3 previous games were rough, 4, 4, and 8 goals against. He earned 2 really bad starts in those 3 games, and then had negative goals saved above average in all 3. So obviously good that the recent stuff has been improved. But I would be a little worried, at least for that first game. He's up against Colorado Wednesday, but he does get Washington this week. And then gets Buffalo, Montreal, and Calgary next week. Are you rushing to go out and grab DeSmith if you have a hole in your goalie roster, or if you've got room on those busy nights when Vancouver plays? Or are you going to kind of keep an eye on this and sort of see what happens maybe in this early match against Colorado?
So I actually have already gone out and grabbed him in one league. And that was a league in particular where I was already kind of thin on goaltending coming into the playoffs, and I just now have Markstrom injured, as we'll discuss momentarily as well. So yeah, I did grab Casey DeSmith, and I think that the schedule in particular next week looks pretty good. Yeah, I think even if there's a bad start against Colorado or another bad start on one of the other games, I'll probably still see it through until Demko returns, just because I think, Vancouver should still be a good bet to win, even with DeSmith as goaltender.
Yeah, I think with that 52% quality start, he's likely to be a net positive for you, especially if he's getting pretty heavy volume here. Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and I think he's a guy that I would run out to grab if he is still available. I know a lot of savvy managers in many leagues have probably got him already, and hopefully it is you, the one who is listening to the show, because I think that's a pretty nice setup, like you said, especially for next week. We got a whole host of injuries and outjuries. You alluded to one here. We did see Jacob Markstrom leave with a lower body injury, and we've now got Dustin Wolf called up, and Dan Vladar is going to be starting or has started the game against Colorado here tonight. I believe he actually holds a 2-1 lead at time of recording here, obviously subject to change. But there's another one, that's another opportunity. We don't have a ton of information about this one. So I don't know that you should necessarily be running out to grab Vladar, especially with, the back end in Calgary looking like it does and some of these rough games that they've had. But there's another option for you, at least in the short term. Imagine that they'll go with, probably alternating between Vladar and Wolf, although maybe it's going to be an opportunity for Wolf to see what they have in him, give him an opportunity. Calgary doesn't have a ton to play for, right? So maybe not something that they are super concerned about trotting Wolf out there for a few games.
Yeah, Vladar and Wolf might be better goaltenders than Casey DeSmith, but I'm not nearly as sure about that as I am sure that Vancouver is better than Calgary this year. While I would, be interested in a Vancouver backup situation during this injury, I'm not sure I would be so interested in Calgary. I think Markstrom is, been holding his own weight in terms of his performance on Calgary this year, and without him, I'm not sure the team is going to provide a conducive environment to a good fantasy goalie performance from one of those other guys.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that regard. The confidence in Vancouver being a superior team to Calgary, I think, is absolutely spot on. So in terms of the group playing in front of him, I think DeSmith is definitely more likely to get the run support and less likely to get blasted for a huge number of goals, although did happen a few starts ago. So we'll at least keep an eye there. Some other injury news. We had kind of a injury rotation over in Washington. Want to take us through who's out and who's in the lineup over in Washington?
Yeah, so we have TJ Oshie returning and is featured on his first game back in line 2, power play 1, with a shot and 2 hits. The Capitals were shut out 3-0, so not a lot of opportunity for Oshie to get the points there. On the other side of the coin, it was Tom Wilson who was out. And I think as of now, we don't have more information about the extent of that injury or how long he's projected to be out. But keep an eye on that. Washington does have a pretty ideal playoff schedule the next few weeks. So if you were running Wilson, see if Oshie's available in the meantime. And if not, look what other Washington players might be available and might fit your schedule.
Yeah, all we know is that it's some kind of upper body injury, and he did not make Monday's lineup against Winnipeg. So yeah, just something to keep an eye on, but not ideal for any Washington player. This is a week where they've got a great schedule, but you need them to score some goals for them to help you in your lineup. So something certainly to keep an eye on. Another injury update, although it's not Not a fresh injury and not anything that is ready to be an outree quite yet, but we did get an update that Tomas Hertl is about 2 weeks away from his Vegas debut. So, that'll be in the fantasy playoffs there for a lot of leagues. But obviously, that'll be a nice bonus to whoever is able to put him in. Obviously, we don't know quite where he will fit into the lineup, but we got some discussion of where he might fit during the Sunday show with Steve and Elon. All just speculation at this point, but looking forward to seeing how those lines shake out ultimately once Vegas is back to full strength. And then we had another injury down in Florida. Derrick, why don't you take the lead? Let us know what's going on with Aaron Ekblad and Evan Rodrigues.
Yeah, so Ekblad is out, apparently likely end of March target for a return. So, that's a 2 to 3 week timeline, I guess. Also, we have Evan Rodrigues out short term. It seems as though, the Panthers aren't going to be in a rush to bring back either of them, given their, playoff position. They're going to want them both healthy for when their playoffs start, not the fantasy playoffs. Rodrigues, it's, what we're hearing is that he's out on Tuesday, but it's only precautionary and he should likely be back on Thursday.
Yeah, so Rodrigues likely just to get right back into things, but they're taking their time, it sounds like, with Ekblad. That'll play into one of our hot players that we'll discuss in our hot and cold section, because I think it does give a little more leeway to Gustav Forsling, who has been playing some big minutes, or played some big minutes rather, in that last game when Ekblad was injured, when he got kind of banged into Vladimir Tarasenko. And I thought it was interesting. The coach said Ekblad's injury is going to be out for 2 weeks and then day to day after that, which to me kind of suggests, let's just take it real easy. So not great probably for anyone who's got Aaron Ekblad on their fantasy roster, because it seems like the team is going to be very, very cautious with him and make sure that he is, as you said, fully healthy for the Panthers playoff run. One other minor outree, Marcus Johansson made his return. Nothing, I believe, on the scoreboard yet. Playing line 3 and power play 2. Probably not a rosterable guy for us at this time. But, just in the interest of completeness, wanted to bring him up. And then the other kind of big theme that we've had lately is that we have seen a lot of folks who have been out with illness lately. For Tuesday and just kind of more generally in the past couple weeks or so, it really pays to watch those changes closely. We know that Yahoo and other platforms don't always update those statuses in time, but a fantasy strategy that I live by is setting an alarm for around 6:50 Eastern time, before you have puck drop for some of those East Coast games. Or whenever you have games starting. I think it's usually smart to just give your fantasy lineup a once over, maybe 5 to 10 minutes before puck drop, because that availability can change very rapidly. Players can be sat for any number of reasons, but these illnesses lately, have been things that have, sometimes just been announced in warmups or even later. So you want to be able to make those swaps, especially here in crunch time when you might be fighting for a playoff spot, or, over the next couple of weeks when you are potentially in the playoffs themselves. When every point counts, you want to make sure you're able to make those swaps as soon as they become available.
Yeah, the flu bug, as it's been called, recently, but also a couple times in the past couple seasons, where it seems, half the league is dealing with this kind of thing. It's some kind of illness. But even just as we get towards the real playoffs, you're going to see more and more players rested, for precautionary reasons, or whatever, term the coach uses to try and avoid a controversy over resting a player that, might otherwise be actually healthy or might have played if the game was important. So yeah, definitely that's a good piece of advice to check the lineup before the start of game times, just before 7 p.m. Eastern on weekdays, but earlier on weekends, as we often have those, 12, 1 p.m. or 4 p.m. starts, depending on the day. So, yeah, keep an eye on that as we get closer and closer to the end of the regular NHL season. I think we'll probably have a few more of those.
And then just from a league setup standpoint, I think, and I know that Brian and Elon have talked about this before in their league setup episode that they do each year during the summer, but maybe avoiding having your playoffs go into the last week of the season, which is when we really start to see teams pack it in, especially with their top players getting rest once that playoff spot is kind of secured and they're not fighting or jostling for position or trying to get this team or that team. That can be really disheartening when, your top draft pick is sitting, not because they're injured or not because they're sick, but because, the team is trying to bubble wrap them and make sure that they are staying safe. And that can really, damage your playoff outlook. So even though I know you want to squeeze every bit out of the fantasy season that you can and have as many weeks of, battling it out, I think sometimes it really is smart to make sure that you are avoiding putting yourself in a position where, teams' best players are missing their opportunities to actually get out there and play. All right, we are going to head into a brief ad break here. Thank you, obviously, for sticking with us. On the other side, we will cover some key hot and cold streaks. You're listening to Short Shifts. Welcome back to Short Shifts. We've got one cold streak and then 4 hot streaks here to talk about. The cold streak actually was something that got mentioned in the mega show with Steve and Elon. But just, in the interest of piling on poor Evgeny Malkin here, the guy has 0 points in the last 3 games, and I believe that is 3 straight cardio sessions, as we like to say, just not doing anything for you stats-wise. Steve said he was running away from the Penguins. Not a terrible idea. They did manage a goal against Ottawa, but lost in overtime. A nice game from Tristan Jarry, who I know Steve was concerned about, but he allowed 2 goals on 39 shots. So, pretty nice numbers for you regardless. So Jarry's still kind of hanging in there and giving you a nice performance. But yeah, I imagine that shot volume against is going to be pretty significant. And, we've been talking about the Senators as one of the most lackluster teams, but certainly coming against the Penguins, it's like the stoppable the stoppable force versus the movable object here, and ultimately it required Pittsburgh to get a goal in the last 30 seconds of the game to even force overtime, where they then lost on a Batherson goal. I believe Malkin did manage to get himself an assist tonight and a shot and a hit. So credit where it's due. He did manage to hit the scoreboard. That brings him up to 4 points in the last 8 games and 1 point in the last 4, just that one lonely assist. So you may still want to run away from the Penguins when it comes to their offense, but Tristan Jarry is probably going to be seeing quite a bit of rubber, or whoever is playing goalie. If they can just keep some out, that might be to their benefit. Another guy that got mentioned was Anthony Duclair, who's got a nice schedule for next week. Not so good this week, obviously, for Tampa. But tell us a little bit about what's going on with one of the newest acquisitions for Tampa Bay in their forward core.
So in what I believe is Duclair's first game on March 9th against Philadelphia, he managed to put up a goal and an assist, but not really rocking a whole lot of ice time. So hard to say for sure if it's going to be a huge jump over his previous production. Duclair's always been someone who can hit the score sheet, can put up multi-point games, but just doesn't happen every game, or sometimes it goes a few games without points. So I don't know if I would be jumping on Duclair given Tampa's schedule right now. But yeah, check after each game or during each game, and if his deployment's good and if he's putting up the numbers, then yeah, maybe pick him up at some point down the line.
Yeah, so we only saw 14 minutes in that first Tampa game, and that's not gonna be super exciting compared to the 16-21 he was getting with the Sharks. But it may be a quality versus quantity view here. playing on line 2 and power play 2 with Tampa, other than the reduced ice time, I think the quality of line mates is up considerably. He did manage 3 shots during his game to kind of keep along with his average. He has 7 points over the last 3 games, although 2 of them were with the Sharks, and 10 points in the last 5 to go along with 16 shots and 5 blocks over that stretch. So, pretty solid contributions across the score sheet, whether you are in a points league or in a categories league. But yes, I think it is, one of those cases where a lot of times these players that get traded to good teams oftentimes see that decrease in their role and in their deployment. If even Jake Guentzel is struggling to break through, although there are good reasons for that, obviously, with him coming back from injury. A guy like Duclair is pretty much guaranteed to, he's probably at his ceiling for deployment here, barring some kind of injury. Another hot streak from another traded player, Vladimir Tarasenko, had 3 points in his second game with Florida after going pointless in the first. That brings him to 6 points in the last 4 games. He's adding a couple of hits per game as well for good measure. So if you get points for that in your league, or if you're in a Cats league, that could be a nice piece for you. I also worry about his reduced ice time, kind of like Duclair. They mentioned on the Mega Show that Tank scored on both of the shots that he took against Calgary on Saturday. He also took out, Aaron Ekblad with that collision, so that's obviously suboptimal. But seems like a decent spot for him. Obviously, at least at even strength. He's not getting, the quasi power play 1 deployment that he was getting, or at least getting at times in Ottawa. But I think being out there with that top line and with Barkov is nice. Obviously, he's more widely held than Duclair, and he doesn't have the 2 off-night schedule next week. So maybe less appealing just from a short-term standpoint, because he may be harder to fit into your lineup. And, of course, he is much less available. He's a guy who's been, owned in a lot. I think he's 65% right now in Yahoo. So I think a lot of the active leagues have got him right now. But an interesting one for sure. Another guy in Florida finding some success is Gustav Forsling, who's been on quite the streak lately. Want to tell us a little bit about what he has accomplished over these last 5 games?
Yeah, Forsling has not put up a point tonight as of recording this, and Florida's in the 3rd period right now. But in the 4 games before that, he put up 2 assists, a goal, an assist, and another 2 assists, and playing above 21 minutes a night each night, including 25-51 on March 9th. Sprinkling in along with that some shots, hits, and blocks. Forsling, it maybe celebrating his contract extension, which is great to see. He, I think, has got to be in a very good mindset, I would think, sort of securing his financial future and his future with the Florida Panthers. And, optimistically looking at the data, you might say, maybe he's playing freer, maybe, somehow that's affecting him and benefiting him. But maybe it's just, random variance and the Ekblad injury making, a little bit of opportunity available. Either way, it's been pretty good. He was, I think, disappointing the first month or so of the season, but otherwise it's been really good. If he's still available, probably a worthwhile contributor.
Yeah, I love to see that big nearly 26 minutes against Calgary with Ekblad going down. It makes me, obviously feel for Ekblad and the injury, but it does seem to signal that it's going to be a good chance for Forsling to continue to put up those counting stats. The shots have not been great. I think just 7 shots over the last 5 games. But he did contribute 6 hits and 8 blocks, so he's helping out in the Bangers Cats, and 6 points over those 5 games as well. Again, like you said, off the score sheet so far, but still some time to maybe make an impact there. I think he's worth a hold while Ekblad is gone and those big minutes are available. He doesn't stand the risk of kind of becoming that third wheel, the spaghetti that Elon and Steve talked about. And he, honestly, he was doing fine with Ekblad healthy. This just helps kind of keep it keep it that way. Continue to give him that opportunity that you want to see. And then one more guy who was traded who is performing very nicely, unfortunately at the expense of my dear Red Wings. Bowen Byram put up another 2 goals, so he's got 3 goals and 1 assist in 3 games for Buffalo. 11 shots in those 3 games. So yes, 3 goals on 11 shots from a defenseman. That is unsustainable. But what I really like to see is that big jump in ice time. We sort of thought he was going to be going from, a situation where, he was behind a bunch of great defenders in Colorado to a place where he was maybe going to be stuck behind, Dahlin and Owen Power. But he's seen some really nice ice time, 16, some games at 16 minutes in Colorado, and now he's getting 23 to 25 minutes a night in Buffalo. I don't think he's going to be able to continue to shoot and score, I should say, like he has been over these games. But, 11 shots over the course of 3 games is really nice. And, continuing to get that big ice time, I think is going to allow him to continue to be a contributor. So for the folks who ran out and grabbed him, they've been rewarded. And if folks were slow to react in your league, might be an opportunity to run out and grab him and, potentially continue to reap the benefit of this big boost in ice time that he's been enjoying. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please be sure to give us a follow at Short Shifts KK. You can follow Brian and Elon at Keeping Carlson. GameDayTweets.com is going to get you all the best info from Twitter, including team by team and searchable tweets by player name. And you can visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, and Natural Stat Trick. Derek, thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Hope you enjoyed yourself. And to everybody else, I want to remind you our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.